Then to the next question in the name of Assembly Member Pigeon, and that's Taxi and Private Hire Directorate. It's 2535. Question 2535.
Thank you, Caroline. I think the answer is absolutely. It is. It's a very, very important issue for Londoners, and the number of cab-related sexual offences has fallen by 37% from 2002-2003 to 2010-2011, and 600 since August 2008. 600 private hire driver licences have been revoked after drivers were cautioned for or convicted of touting. And one of the things that we're doing is writing to and we've already done this, to write to the Home Secretary to ask her to rethink the scrapping of the enhanced CRB checks for taxi and private hire drivers. That letter went on the 8th of July.
Okay, we'll come on to that in a moment. I mean, I think you're effectively saying that you think the Taxi and Private Hire Directorate is effective, but the problem of legal minicab practices in London is absolutely rife, and it really does pose a serious threat to passengers. And I've recently been out with taxi drivers looking at the problem in central London in particular, where we see minicabs illegally parked in bus lanes, massive queues on double yellow lines, and effectively forming their own ranks. But you've only got about 56 enforcement officers, I understand, and only 6 work at night and none at weekends. If you compare this to New York, which has a similar, compare cabs and taxis in New York, it's similar numbers, yet they have 413. Will you look to significantly increase enforcement activities and the number of enforcement officers on the streets of London?
Well, as I remember, we did double the teams when we came in 2008.
I understand only 6 work at night and none at weekends.
I hear what you say about only 6 working at night. I will investigate whether that is in fact accurate. But Caroline, I'm not going to hide from it. This is a problem, and it's something that we want to deal with very fiercely. And it may be that there is more that needs to be done. I will certainly make sure your concerns and the points you make are passed back the line to TfL. And what I would like to hear from TfL is, and I've got quite a lot of stuff here in my brief, but what I haven't heard is more granular stuff about the extent of the problem. And you say you've been out with the taxi trade recently. Obviously, we've all done that and seen the problem taking place on our streets. I'd like to have a bit more data about the way in which it's getting worse. I can recite all sorts of statistics about the people who are arrested.
Follow-up questions. The other suggestion I've got to put to you is that in other parts of the country, they have signage on the side of minicabs that say no booking, no ride, to make it absolutely clear that you have to book before you use private hire. You can only flag down a black cab. Will you consider rolling out something similar in London?
We'll certainly look at that. I'm sure that is already used in some places. I've certainly seen signs of that kind on some minicabs.
From outside London, will you look to do that, please?
I will certainly look at it.
Fantastic.
And I'd be grateful if, Karen, if you could furnish me with the evidence that you've procured about the extent of the problem.
My final question: I absolutely support you on the need for CRB enhanced checks for taxi and cab drivers, and I fully support you on that. But there is another issue to do with drivers from overseas, and there are some very serious issues around that. I'm wondering whether you've made any representations to government about that.
Sorry, do you mean minicab drivers from overseas?
Drivers from overseas. There are some issues in terms of there were some terrible incidents reported because they can't get the record checks that you have for drivers in this country, and I'm wondering what representations you're making to government on this anomaly to make sure that passengers are safe in London.
You mean you can get a minicab licence?
They can't fully check everyone's records, and there are people who've been given licences who have had terrible criminal records in a different country. What are you doing with the Home Office to make representations on that?
Well, Again, I'd be grateful for the
Have you
data.
made any representations?
No, this is not something I've raised yet with the Home Office because it hasn't yet been brought to my attention. I'm grateful to you for bringing it up. And if there's something we can do to ensure that drivers from overseas don't abuse their, or we can make sure that drivers from overseas are not people of bad character, and if we can something do to make sure they're properly checked, then obviously we will.
I think given that your Director of Taxi and Private Hire has recently said that he cannot give an assurance that an applicant for a private hires licence has never done anything wrong and hasn't been arrested for a sex attack or violence and never charged, and this worries the hell out of me. That's what he said. Given that he's saying that, I'm surprised it hasn't been raised with you.
It hasn't
please,
been. Well,
please do make sure that you raise this to government.
I'm grateful to you for raising it, and obviously we will see what we can do to make sure there's a level playing field, because it isn't right that people can get a licence to drive a minicab on one basis because they happen to be nationals of this country and are exempt from checks because they're nationals of another country. That is not right, and as you rightly say, it risks passengers.
Will you, in the short term, look whether you can put any stop on licences where you can't get full checks so that passengers aren't put at risk?
Well, I will have to look at that, Caroline. I will come back to you in greater detail about this issue, about the problem of overseas nationals having minicab licences. I'm not briefed on the extent of the problem. How many foreign nationals have minicab licences? What evidence there is that they're abusing it? What evidence there is that they are convicted criminals or have a criminal record? Let's look into it. I don't want to give you an impromptu proposal now to ban all foreign nationals from seeking employment opportunities in this country as minicab drivers, but let's look at it in a balanced way.
Thank you.
Can I ask members agreement to suspend Standing Order 2.9b so that we can finish the Mayor's questions?
Agreed.
Agreed, we have agreement. Assembly Member Evans.
Chair, and I'm grateful for Caroline giving me another opportunity to talk about this issue, which is of great concern to my constituents. Because not only do we find illegal minicab drivers in some cases with criminal records, but actually much more common is the finding of illegal drivers who are not insured to carry passengers in vehicles which are not suitable, not roadworthy and not insured themselves. We discover when we do work on this that there is widespread benefit fraud, that there are people who shouldn't even be in the country who are working as minicab drivers. And in short, the discovery of an illegal minicab driver in London may well be the tip of the iceberg and reveal a number of other offences that have been completed. Can you make sure, Mr. Mayor, that under our new dynamic police commissioner, who is very keen on zero-tolerance approach, that when work is done to halt the illegal minicab trade, further investigation is done so we can prosecute the crimes that occur behind that facade as well?
Yes.